Hey, Falcons NFL fans! Welcome to another episode of NFL Jocks and Pigskins with Tom Pollen. Is this Zozo?
Zozo.
Zozo with Tom. Chris Mitherman behind the scenes producing for us today. I'm Dave Holcomb. Got another great show for you today. Action in the NFL on Saturday.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about those games today. Full slate as always on Sunday as well, and a really important game for the Falcons, as we've been saying the last couple of weeks. But that's going to remain the case as long as they can stay in this playoff hunt. A really disappointing loss, obviously, last week.
Yep. Yeah, that was terrible. Well, they had the chance. I mean, they had the lead late, and that's the one time when their defense kind of dropped the ball, couldn't hold on, and made it rough. So, mistakes by the Falcons in that game, but overall put themselves in a position to win, but couldn't close. So, which has been a problem with this team, is closing and being able to hold on, being able to play consistently, let's put it that way. Not enough consistency on this Falcons team. Some couple mistakes by Ritter. Not all his fault, though. Again, don't keep going towards Desmond Ritter and saying this is all his fault for what happened to the Falcons last week. As I say, they had the chance. They were up 25-22 late in the game. Tampa's on their last drive, and they let Tampa drive the ball right down the field. And this defense held on for most of the game. So it's not like the defense didn't play well, but the one time where you need them, the clutch portion of the game, they didn't come through.
Yeah, and I think a lot of fans were really disappointed by that on Twitter. This defense has been statistically better in a lot of areas and somewhat dominant at times, maybe against not great offenses like the New York Jets, but still playing much better football this year than the first 2 years under Arthur Smith. But at key moments against Buccaneers a few weeks ago, against the Vikings, didn't come up with the big stop to secure that, the big home victory that right now is the difference between being in the playoffs and not.
Yeah, exactly. They're an edge rusher away. They still need an edge rusher. Ebikite is good, but he's not going to give you that consistent pass rush. I tell you, watching Montez Sweat, what he's done with the Bears the last 3 weeks, that Bears defense has stepped up their game, just having Montez Sweat in there. That's what a top pass rusher will do. And that's been the frustrating part of these Falcons. They don't build with a pass rusher. So
you
got to do something about that.
Right.
And we're seeing how it's affected their defense over these last couple of weeks. Last week against Tampa, not being able to finish.
And bringing up Sweat, I think you bring him up because he plays for the Bears, but that was a guy that was adamantly trying to get to Atlanta, and reportedly the Falcons had an offer in on him, just wasn't as good of an offer as the Bears gave, and there was the question of the contract and will he sign in Chicago. Ended up signing that big contract, and that's been a really nice move for the Bears.
It's been great. That shows you, but I'm just using that as an example of what that edge rusher can do for you. Yeah. How big of a difference that edge rusher can make on your defense. Mm-hmm. And that's what the Falcons are missing. They need that big play that puts an offense behind the sticks and makes an offense, a little bit more desperate, especially late in the game. And that is, defense has everything else. I like their secondary. I like their line. I like their inner line play. They play against the run is strong, but you're getting pressures on the quarterback, but you're not bringing them down. And that's where we're still falling short.
Gary has an early question for us. Do you think last week's loss might lead to Smith being canned at year's end or before?
You know, I don't know. They stay in the playoff hunt, and I think Smith probably is going to be back for next year. One thing I'd like to see out of Smith, Dave Ragone is not the offensive coordinator. Arthur Smith is. Bring in a serious offensive coordinator, and bring in a dedicated quarterbacks coach. Somebody who is going to work with Ritter and whatever other quarterback the Falcons bring in full time and be there to answer questions, be there to help with fundamentals. You know, Arthur Smith's working on the game plan. He's supposed to be responsible for both units, but
Right.
he's technically not because he's too busy with the offense. And that's a problem because Dave Ragone really doesn't do anything with this offense. I think Dave Ragone is more of a quarterback's coach. So, but that's a problem is you get Arthur Smith, he has nobody to really check, you know, whatever Arthur Smith wants to do is what the Falcons are going to do. There's nobody to say, hey, you know, why don't we look at, you know, different play selection, different series. You know, there's nobody to really, for Arthur Smith to kind of keep Arthur Smith in check and say, you know, maybe this is a better course. Maybe this is a better way to run the offense. So that I think that's a problem all year. So I would like to see the Falcons insist that Smith bring in an offensive coordinator. Still can be Smith's offense.
Yeah.
But bring in an offensive coordinator and bring in a dedicated quarterbacks coach, or make Dave Ragone the dedicated quarterbacks coach.
Yeah. Well, that would be kind of odd, him going from coordinator to the quarterbacks coach. But
yeah, I know. But he's only coordinator in name.
But that name, the name's important, though. I have a hard time believing he'll go back in name recognition to a quarterbacks coach role. But you know, to get back to Gary's question, I think it's still to be determined. I mean, I know that's a cop out, but you know, we want to make these, as I was kind of saying last week when we were talking about mock drafts and things of that nature, and it's fun to talk about. I wrote a bunch of articles this week about Justin Fields going to the Steelers and who Steelers could hire an offensive coordinator. At least in that case, they have an opening at offensive coordinator, so they're going to hire somebody.
Yes.
But you know, we still got 4 games left, and tomorrow is, I think, really important. And I know we sell every game that's up next for the Falcons for our show's purposes, but we've seen a lot of upsets in just the last week or so in the NFL.
Oh God, last week was ridiculous.
Yeah, and you know, I don't think the Falcons can afford to sleep. Obviously, they can't afford to sleep on the Panthers and lose this game, and they can't, you know, come into the matchup with the attitude of we're just going to just roll into Carolina and beat up on this team.
Yeah, you're not going to throw the helmets on the field and say, yeah, we're going to beat this guys. You know, yeah. It doesn't work that way in the NFL. The minute you start getting overconfidence, the minute you start, you know, you get your brains beat in for a week. And
absolutely.
It happened to a lot of teams last week.
Yeah, it did. And Brian reminding us, he said last week is kind of the game the Falcons would lose. I don't want to say that a road matchup against a 1-win team is a kind of game Falcons would lose as well, but you can't overlook this opponent. And it's a type of game that if the Falcons lost, I'm not saying they're going to, I don't think they will, but that is the type, if they struggle tomorrow, if they end up losing the Panthers, that's the type of game that I think we could say, yeah, Gary, he's going to get fired for that result.
That puts Arthur Smith in danger, yes.
Yeah. And looking ahead to the schedule, which Brian is one step ahead of me here, he's saying they play 4 pretty good defenses to end the season. Yeah, it's not an easy schedule. We talked preseason, even midseason, that this is an easy slate for the Falcons. Easy, you know, is always relative. But they lost the game against Arizona. Minnesota was kind of middle of the road when they played them. Now they're back to being, I guess, middle of the road. They're up and down team that, again, they lost to. Tennessee doesn't have that many wins. They lost to them as well. So now you're looking at, yes, you got Carolina tomorrow. But at the end of the season, you got 3 teams that are playing pretty well. You got the Colts, who got the Steelers today, could be in playoff position if they beat the Steelers later Saturday. Right. A Bears team that's playing really well, and a Saints team that you did just beat, but is competing for that division title as well. So all of a sudden, I don't want to say this is a really difficult schedule, but it could be 4 teams that aren't in the playoffs, these final 4 matchups, but they're not teams you can sleep on either, and teams that have something to play for.
Exactly.
Maybe except Carolina. The other 3 have something to play for.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, these are games you cannot take lightly and games you have to approach. And if you don't win them, you don't deserve to be in the playoffs.
Yeah.
That's just what it boils down to. If you can't get yourself up to play these next 4 games, no, you don't deserve to go there. And then, yes, Arthur Smith is in trouble. So, that's the way it looks. So we will see as we go on in the season. I know, you're right, Dave. It sounds like a cop-out, but, how did the Falcons handle this stretch run? Failed last week. Did not do what they needed to do last week. So it was frustrating because they had to leave. I know, as I say, Desmond Ridder made some mistakes. Desmond Ridder made some damn good plays too. So, and put that Falcons team in a position to win that game and to put the Falcons in first place in the NFC South. And that's all you can ask of your quarterback. He can't do everything.
A missed opportunity, really, because a win there would have made the Falcons 7-6. You have a 1-game lead over the Saints, and the Buccaneers are pretty much out of it at 5-8. Instead, you got a 3-way tie and kind of chaos for the final 4 weeks.
Right.
Yeah, Brian says it's so disappointing. He's predicting a 2-2 finish, which would put the Falcons at 8-9.
Yeah.
Don't think that's going to be enough, and Brian doesn't think so either.
I don't think so either. I don't think that's going to get there. Saints aren't playing great, but they're playing decent football. They're between Derek Carr and Taysom Smith. They're finding a way to move the ball downfield. Carr's not doing everything for them, but doing enough along with Taysom Smith in red zone situations to keep the Saints competitive. And the Saints defense is good. So it's not like that team needs a lot to get over the top. Tampa, I still don't think they're as good as they showed last week. Taysom Hill. Who did I say? Did I say? Yeah, Taysom Hill. I'm sorry. But I don't think the Bucs are still as good as they showed last week. Again, Baker Mayfield had some problems, but came through for the Bucs on their final drive. But again, I don't think Baker Mayfield's consistent enough to take that team to the playoffs.
I would agree with you, but I mean, it's just been a crazy division. Oh, I think I might believe in the Buccaneers more than the Saints.
It's tough to say. I can't get a handle on this season. This season's killing me as far as picks are going, because every time I think I got a handle on a team, they come out and just completely flip the script on me. So,
Well, I wanted to bring up this point that Brian said about the top 4 the 4 defenses that the Falcons are going to play to end the season. Panthers are 4th in yards allowed this year. So, don't be fooled by that one win. And they played the Falcons pretty tough in week 1 in Atlanta. So
they did.
Needed a pick 6 really to win that game by multiple scores. So it's going to be, I think it'll be a close matchup tomorrow. And then, as we already said, the Bears playing better the last few weeks, 12th overall in defense. I think they're probably would, if we were ranking top defenses right now, they're in the top 10. And
yeah, but they're also, I think, the second best rushing defense in the league. So, a game that's not going to be easy for Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill, I got Taysom Hill on the mind all of a sudden. A game that's not going to be easy for Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier to be effective. So there goes Dave again. So, but again, the Bears are the second best rushing defense in the league, and so that you're going to be looking at Desmond Ridder trying to leaning on Desmond Ridder to do more. Desmond Ridder seems to be developing a great rapport with Drake London. Those two have really hooked up quite a bit the last couple of weeks, and London seems to be able to make some catches that, if Ridder overthrows, Ridder throws back shoulder. London made a catch last week that looked like he was defensive back, taking the ball away from the wide receivers. Made a play on the ball that was brilliant. And so I think you're going to see more Desmond Ridder, Drake London over the last 4 weeks of the season, because they're coming together as a combo. So Todd says, just throws it in the triple coverage to London, has no clue what he's doing. I don't believe that, Todd. I think he has a clue of what he's doing. I don't think his throws are as accurate as they could be sometimes, but I do think Ridder does have an idea of what he's doing. Made a mistake last week on the interception, within the 5-yard line. Well, it was actually within the 10-yard line, but got turned around, and by the time he turned back towards Bijan Robinson, the defensive back was making a play on the ball, and he didn't see him. So that was a big mistake. Missed Pitts wide open at the goal line. Huge mistake. Todd, is Ridder the answer for next year?
He's putting you on the spot.
He's put me on the spot. As I say, I want to see Ridder get a dedicated quarterback coach. I still think Ridder, we've only basically seen him as far as one. He's had one full season. You got to realize Ridder hasn't been here he's been here for 2 years, but he's only played for the final 4 games of last season that didn't really matter much.
Yeah.
And he's been the starter this week. Yeah, he's made mistakes, but I think Ridder can read. That's the thing. I think he does well reading his options, and that's an important step for a quarterback. But can he break the mistakes? I don't know. I can't predict that. I would like to think that he can. I like his calm. I like his collectiveness. I like what he does with this team when they need him to drive the ball downfield. So, it's rough. I think you got to bring in competition for Ridder, for the spring and for training camp. You have to bring in competition. He can't go into the season being named as your number one quarterback. So maybe that's the best way I can approach it, is make sure.
He might want.
Yeah, make sure that Ridder has competition. Don't make it easy on him. And then, maybe we see a better Ridder. We knew Taylor Heineke was not going to be competition for Ridder this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, Todd, I think he does hold the ball too long sometimes. But again, that's a young quarterback problem that you can fix. If you ask his teammates, there's no panic. They don't see the panic. His teammates really do like how Ridder stays calm and collected as he's driving the team down the field, as he takes control in the huddle. So it's rough to say because, again, young quarterback really this is his first season in the league. And he's shown progress. He's shown mistakes. Yeah, but that's what you're going to get out of a first-year quarterback, no matter who he is.
Yeah. To build off your point, Tom, I think that Ritter's played good enough, or hasn't had enough time, I guess I should say, that I would feel okay with him going in as the quarterback next year. You want to bring in competition for every position. So if they could do that, that would be great. But I think the key to whether they actually replace him or not is who can they replace him with? You know, with the last few weeks, we've talked about how the quarterback play around the league is down. And that's only going to make it harder to find another quarterback because, I mean, this was the case anyway, but when a team finds a quarterback, they don't let him go. So, and these last few drafts have not replenished the quarterback veterans that have been leaving the league. And then on top of that, we've had all these injuries with backup quarterbacks playing a lot. So if the Falcons if they're not in draft position to draft one of the top quarterbacks, and I haven't looked at the quarterback class yet, guys, so I don't know. And we don't know where the Falcons will be picking either. So if they make the playoffs,
right,
then they're going to be picking in the final 14 picks that they won't be in a position to take a quarterback. But if they are in a position to take a quarterback, then I think they will be met with an interesting choice that they could end up, drafting somebody else that not just pressures Ritter, but potentially replaces him.
Yeah.
But it all depends. Again, I'm saying it all depends on these last 4 games, but I think it really does, because if they make the playoffs, then Ritter is probably the starter next year. And really, Ritter he's not just playing for his job with his performances, but if the farther this team goes, the harder it will be to replace him in the draft. So he's playing for that too.
Yeah, it's weird how this can develop. And the Falcons are not going to be in a good spot in the draft. Even if they finish 8-9, they're not going to be in a strong spot in the draft to grab a quarterback. So, and that's the thing. They got to get an edge rusher at some point. So if you don't take an edge rusher in the first round, you got to sign an edge rusher. And you got to get one way or another going into next season to really top off this defense. But
the ESPN mock draft had them taking a cornerback.
Oh, God. For crying out loud. Who the hell's doing ESPN's mock drafts?
Matt Miller.
Okay. That's one guy I want to avoid from here on out.
Really? Because of that one pick?
Use your brains, folks. My God, if you're going to do a mock draft before the season's over, which is just clickbait anyway, use your head.
People want to talk about the draft.
I know. And those articles.
Every question we've received so far in today's show has been about next season, really. Will Arthur Smith be back? Will Ritter be back? Nothing about tomorrow's matchup against the Panthers, guys.
No, that's true. Everybody's talking about next year. Hey, folks, this season's not over. We still got some games to play.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, but at the same time, I understand why there's mock drafts, because there's a market for it.
Yeah, I know.
People love them. People love talking about the draft and next season. It's kind of sad because Falcons could still make some noise this year. But
they can.
But
I understand why Falcons fans are disappointed, especially after last week's game, because that was a rough one to take. You were playing to put some space in between yourselves and the rest of the NFC South, and you missed.
Yeah.
And it was a disappointing game to take. It was a tough game to take. Overall, overall, I think they played well, but they didn't, just a couple of things that got them down. And again, I keep harping on this, but winning is a habit. And being able to close out games, even if you haven't played a great game, even if you haven't had a stellar performance, you made mistakes, but you still can close out a game. And that's what Brandon Staley got fired for.
Yeah. I think he got fired for a lot.
Well, but the Chargers never learned how to close out a game. The Chargers, believe how many 3-point losses they've had this year.
Yeah, well, and then, I mean, they just got absolutely obliterated.
They got destroyed by a team that shouldn't have been in a position to take them down like that.
Yeah, and as Todd said a few minutes ago, Falcons lose Sunday. I think he means Arthur Smith here. Should be fired. I mean, I'm not going to go that far, but that was the point that I made a little bit earlier in the show. That to Gary's question, this is a game that if you do not win, your job security becomes very fickle. It's a game that you have to win,
and it has to, because you're not fooling the fans. If they don't win tomorrow against a 1-13 team that is just kind of playing out the season to see what they're going to have, what they're going to be playing with next year. They're playing out the season to see what the Bears are going to be playing with next year because the Bears own their number 1 pick. So,
right, yeah.
But, this is a team, as I say, these are the teams you need to beat up on if you're going to be a playoff squad. If you're going to make the playoffs, playoff teams beat up on these guys. They beat up on the teams on their schedule that they're supposed to beat. And
I don't think they're beating up on them, Tom. We said that before they played Tennessee. They lost. I think we said that one other time.
I know.
And they also lost. So, or I think maybe we said that against the Jets, and they did win that game.
Yeah.
But it was close.
But it was tough.
Yeah. Yeah. So I really expect this to be a tough game tomorrow.
Yeah. I expect it to be a tough game because of Carolina's defense. I think Atlanta's defense, the Falcons' defense, can hold down Carolina fairly nicely. As long as you keep Adam Thielen covered, there's not much Carolina can do against you on offense. So, that's the thing. You got to be able to beat them on their defense. Their defense is pretty good. And you got to keep Burns out of the backfield because he's the best guy on their team. He's the edge rusher. He's the guy who keeps them in games. So if you can keep him out of the backfield, and then I still think this Falcons team should win this game handily. And I keep saying that, and they don't win games handily. I know that.
Yeah. So I think it will be a close game tomorrow. What's the spread?
The spread is, let me look on my sheet here. Look on my spreadsheet. The Falcons are favored by 3 points. So basically,
on a neutral field.
Yes. On a neutral field.
But this game isn't in Atlanta. It's in
right.
On a neutral field, it would be 6 points.
Yeah, neutral field would be 6 points. You get 3 points for a neutral field. Falcons, they're expecting a win fairly handily. Falcons are decidedly better than the Carolina through all of my statistical categories. So, but they were against the Jets too, but the Jets are monsters on defense.
Yeah.
And the Jets defense showed you what they could do last week.
Yeah.
So, but again, I want to see this Falcons team make a statement victory. If Arthur Smith is going to come back next year, he needs a statement win. He needs a win they can point to and say, this is our season. This is when we really asserted ourselves. And we haven't had that.
Yeah.
And I think that's been the frustrating things for fans. And it magnifies mistakes. because when you're not winning games, you're not asserting yourself. You're not taking a lead or 2-score lead. You don't look as competent to fans. You don't look like you're getting the best out of your team. You look like you're making mistakes as a coach. When games are either tighter than they should be, or you're not winning the games you should be.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, but that happens around the league. Again, there's just so much parity in the NFL right now, and there really aren't very many dominant teams, not the 49ers. And I guess you're going to put the Cowboys in that category now because they beat up on the Eagles last week. I don't know. It's always
Cowboys in the category yet until the
it's always
Cowboys show you they can beat more winning teams. The Cowboys do what you're supposed to do against losing teams. They beat the crap out of them.
Well, but they did beat the crap out of Philadelphia last week. I'm going to give them some credit.
I give them credit for that, yes.
But your point last week about the Miami Dolphins, the Dolphins haven't beaten a team with a winning record yet. They lost to the Tennessee Titans last week, a game that they should not have lost.
No.
And they're the 2 seed in the AFC. They're the second best record team in the AFC. So I think that just summarizes the NFL this year, right? That you're gonna every game is close. There are no dominant teams. You had the Ravens going to overtime. They're the 1 seed in the
AFC.
Yes. They needed overtime to beat a non-playoff team at home. So that's just the way this season has been.
Yeah, it has. Believe me. Let me tell you, I know exactly how this season has been, considering how my picks have gone. As I say, every time I think I got a handle on a team, I don't have a handle on the team. And it's been crazy. It's been rough.
Yeah, Brian, the league is really wacky, and I mean that's why we love it, right? I mean you really don't know what you're going to see every time you turn a game on,
right?
2-10, 1-13 doesn't matter. Those teams have been winning some games lately. Maybe not Carolina, but everybody else has been winning games.
Well, Jets won last week very convincingly.
Yeah,
I mean it's been that kind of season where you thought, you knew what you were going to get out of the Jets and their offense. And next thing you know, against Houston, which was playing pretty good ball, Houston just fell apart.
Yeah. Right.
And so it's a rough thing to see because, Houston was in a spot to – they actually had a playoff spot for a little while. And the Jets knocked them backwards. So,
I mean, I guess another way I could summarize the AFC wildcard picture at this point, the Steelers have lost back-to-back games to previously 2-10 teams, and they're in the sixth. They're in 6th place. They didn't lose any. They didn't lose any spots in the playoffs, despite 2 really bad losses at home.
Yeah, 2 terrible losses.
So
it's tough to read.
Yeah.
Which is why, you can't count out the Falcons out of this one. There's plenty of opportunity out there. You're in the division that I've said since the beginning of the season. You're in the division that is right for the taking. I'm going to my nose a lot today. I've had a bad case of hay fever all day, so just sneezing my brains out here in Chicago because of all the rain and wet. So I do apologize for that. I know it's got to irritate people, but I'll try and avoid it for the rest of the show. But
I wanted to get to some comments.
Sure.
You want to go to the comments? Yeah. Todd says he had 2 very negative comments about Coach Arthur Smith and then Arthur Blank. I wanted to get them both on here. Coach Smith, let's be honest, is arrogant. He runs these trick plays still in the red zone with tight end Smith and Pitts blocking despite the fans. And then about Blank, he said Blank has a lot of other business issues new golf venture, soccer, Falcons are not as important as long as he is making money. Todd, I will agree with you with Smith. We've talked about his play calling a lot and how he's got to be the smartest guy in the room and gets too cute at times, whatever cliche you want to use. That's
but it's true
on a play caller. Yeah, I think it applies to Arthur Smith. Arthur Blank, I mean, I can't say I follow him on a day-to-day basis, what he's doing on day-to-day in his life, but I think the Falcons are pretty important to him. And I think it really irks him that his franchise has the biggest blown lead, I should say, in Super Bowl history. And his Falcons have never won the Super Bowl. And he's getting up there in age. I think one of his last bucket list things is to see the Falcons win the Super Bowl.
He wants the Super Bowl.
And I think that was partially why, they got into such cap hell late in the Matt Ryan era, because they thought they were close. And I mean, they were really close there in 2016, playoff team in 2017. But then in 2018, 2019, Blank doubled down on a lot of the veterans, gave them contract extensions, gave Matt Ryan, Julio Jones extensions, wanted to win the Super Bowl with this group of players when really the writing was already on the wall, definitely by 2019, I think, that the team was not going to win the way it was currently structured.
Right. The window was closed.
Yeah. Yeah. So unless Blank has had a change of heart with the team over the last 5 years, and I haven't really seen it, I think he really wants to win, I guess is the best way to put it. And I think he's gotten smarter maybe over the last couple of years, that he's gotten a little more patient with and kept Smith on for 3 seasons despite 2 losing records to begin his tenure. But I really think that Blank will do anything to get the Falcons a Super Bowl title. But that's just my opinion.
I agree with you, Dave. I think he will, but the problem is I think he wants to do too much.
Right. Yeah. I think he gets in his own way, for sure.
Right. He gets in his own way. He gets in his general manager's way.
Yeah, I think that's a bigger issue than him not caring or not just wanting to make money. I don't think he's that kind of owner.
He cares too much about these Falcons and about wanting to get a Super Bowl out of this team. But he's got to sit back and let his people do their jobs too. And that's where Dimitroff got in trouble, because I think Blank stepped on Dimitroff in a couple of instances. I'm hoping that he doesn't do that with Terry Fontenot, because I think Fontenot has done a fine job in his first real offseason in building a team here and building something that I think can compete on the long term. So, let's let this run its course instead of keep trying to insert himself into the player's side, because that's when teams have a problem, is when owners decide that they know more about football than your football guys do. And we should be doing other things than their football guys say they should be doing.
Yeah. Yeah. But to in his defense, that's a common problem among almost all owners now. Almost all owners do this now.
Yes, a lot of them. Right.
And I think the ones that maybe you think don't do it quietly and you just don't hear about it. Maybe. I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to know. But Todd likes some of what I said, but he did come back and say Rich McKay is running the show still, and should he be? I mean, that's hard to say. I don't know, how influential McKay is with Fontenot and his signings, and we're just not there every day to know. I don't feel like I'm confident in commenting on Rich McKay, because I don't know exactly what decisions he's made and what he does that Arthur Blank doesn't, or what he does that, we think Fontenot has done. So that's an interesting point. I didn't bring up Rich McKay. He's the president of the team. I think it's his official title. I just don't know what he does on a day-to-day basis that you see on the field as a fan, is what I would say.
Yeah, it's hard for me to say too from where I'm at. So,
All right, Todd's responding here. He said, "I asked D-Led, Orlando Ledbetter from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, and he told me Rich is the closest advisor to blank. Everything runs through Rich." Okay, that's interesting.
All right, that's interesting then. And maybe it's McKay who we need to be clamping down a little bit more on, but it seems to me like McKay stays in the shadows more than anything. So,
well, that was kind of the point I just made, that there are people that we don't talk about, or there's owners out there that we think are completely hands off, and they're not. They're just not front and center publicly, and they are making the decisions, pulling the strings behind the scenes, and the head coach, general manager is the one either taking the blame or receiving the credit for, quite frankly.
Yeah. Yeah. So, okay, go ahead.
Yeah, we have a new commenter, Alberto Molina. Thanks so much for joining us. New to the channel. Thanks for checking us out. He asked, do you all see Arthur Smith gaveling a job next year if he loses his job? Alberto, I had to look up what this word gaveling means, and it means bring to order by use of a gavel. So I guess I need to go now look up what gavel means. Well, love it when the definition has the word in the definition, right?
Yeah, look up a slang word. Look it up as a slang term, maybe. I think Arthur Blank, if he loses this game, it's not autocorrect.
Okay, so it was having a job next year. Got it. Okay. Yeah. I thought you were using some fancy word, Alberto, and I didn't want to, sound dumb. Sorry, but autocorrect. Okay. As we kind of answered before, I think. Let me put it this way: if the Falcons lose tomorrow, Arthur Smith's seat is a lot warmer than if they win tomorrow and finish 7-10 or 8-9 and don't make the playoffs.
Right.
Tomorrow's game is very important for Arthur Smith. And it depends on the fashion in which they lose, I guess. If it's some embarrassment like Thursday night, that's why, I know you brought up Brandon Staley's record in losing all these 3-point games, but I think he got fired because he couldn't have a competent defense despite being a defensive coordinator previously in his former job. And then just in his first game without Justin Herbert, just utterly embarrassed, giving up 63 points, 42 points before halftime. I'm not saying that Falcons could go through something like that, but if it's embarrassing on that level in some way, Smith could very well lose his job because of tomorrow's performance.
Well, you don't want to see it be like a 30-6 loss, like, the Jets handed the Texans last week. Because I would say that's embarrassing too.
Right. Yeah. I'm not saying they have to give up 63 points for it to be a fireable offense.
Right.
I'm saying something embarrassing like that. And
a 2-score loss to the Panthers is a very bad thing. It's terrible.
Yes.
And I get that's obvious. But it makes Arthur Smith look bad.
Yeah.
Because it makes us look like throughout the entire season, you've taken a step backwards. Instead of, continued improvement, keeping this team in the race, it looks like you've taken a step backwards if they lose by 2 scores tomorrow. So if they lose in the fourth quarter, it's still rough. It's still telling me that you haven't taught this team well enough. You haven't coached this team well enough to get them in this habit of winning.
Yeah.
Winning's a habit. Winning is a mindset. And that's something that I have not seen out of this Falcons team. They've won games. They've won games they should have lost. They've lost games they should have won. It's, on both sides of the fence.
Right. And a lot of times you end up where you're supposed to be. And in some ways, maybe the Falcons are right where they should be record-wise and fighting for the division.
My problem is I don't believe that. They have so much talent on offense, unless they're not getting everything they need to out of this offense. I still find it funny that Jonnu Smith gets a lot more
Pitts.
a lot more targets than Kyle Pitts does. And I haven't studied the film. I don't know what Kyle Pitts is doing on the field, or if Kyle Pitts, is he not getting open? Is he not putting out the effort? And I've heard some fans say that, but I can't say that for myself because I haven't looked at the all 22 film. And maybe I need to go back a few games and look at some of that to see how Pitts is, running routes. Is Pitts being emphasized, or is Jonnu Smith? He's worked with Arthur Smith before. Is Jonnu Smith just has that familiarity with him that he likes Jonnu Smith better than Kyle Pitts, which would be ridiculous, but I can't answer to that. Yeah, Brian, 4th overall pick. So so it's rough because Jonnu Smith gets a lot more face time at tight end than Kyle Pitts does. But this is a team that you drafted a lot of offensive players high. You've drafted them to kind of be the marquee players in this offense. I think Drake London's becoming that. Drake London's making some outstanding catches. And he gets open. Drake London is getting open for Desmond Ridder, and Ridder is getting in the ball. It's been a great combo for the Falcons this year between those two. So I like what I see there. But yeah, and Bijan Robinson, Tyler Algier ran for 1,000 yards last year. He's still a truck when he going through the line. I think you got some talent on this team, and you signed talent on defense on this team. So I don't think they've gotten everything out of this team that they should be getting right now. And that's another that would be the one thing I would say is the big problem with Arthur Smith. I don't think he's gotten the most out of what he's been given. Todd has a comment about Pitts. Says he's running at half speed most of the time. And either hurt or a bust. And he says leaning towards a bust. As I say, I have to watch some film on that. And maybe I'll do that this week and come back next week with some better analysis on Kyle Pitts. Concentrate on watching Pitts and seeing what he does on the field, seeing what he's assigned to do and how he does it, how he carries out those assignments.
Yeah, we hope to have more analysis on that next week. Again, really important game for the Falcons in Carolina tomorrow. But it's time for your picks against the spread, Tom.
Oh, my God, my picks against the spread. Yeah, I had a rough week last week. Cleveland did come through for me. But Indianapolis lost bad. And the Ravens didn't cover. Even though right now I'm going to take the Packers Sunday at noon or Sunday at 1 o'clock, your time. Zozo, out of my way. I'm trying to be analytical here. Packers, she's constantly looking out the window today. I don't know if she's trying to find mice from the second floor or what. But Packers -3.5 against the Buccaneers. Packers had a rough game last week. But as I said, I'm not sold on the Buccaneers either. And the Packers have shown they've been playing a lot better football over the last few weeks. And I like that. I like this matchup. So I'm taking Green Bay -3.5. Let's see what else we got. I am taking Tennessee -3.5 at home against the Houston Texans. Davis Mills is starting this week. CJ Stroud's out with a concussion. Will Levis is playing very good at quarterback. Will Levis has had some really good games, especially at home. And I like Levis this week against Davis Mills. So I'm taking Tennessee -3.5. Had a little problem trying to find that last game that one to round out my picks. And Zozo out of my way. And I'm not sold on the Jets, but then I'm not sold on Miami. So I'm not taking that Miami -8.5. It's I would say the Rams -6.5 at home against the Commanders in late afternoon. Commanders have not been playing well. Commanders have been playing terrible. Even firing Jack Del Rio, that's been kind of, I think Jack Del Rio took the fall for a lot of problems on that defense. And I think Ron Rivera, if you want to talk about a coach that's going to get fired at the end of the year, I think Ron Rivera is definitely on the hot seat, So
yeah.
I think he's going to be. I think Washington's going to move on from him. Maybe Eric Bieniemy takes over. I don't know. That could be.
Really, you think that might happen?
I think it could happen. Bieniemy's gotten a lot out of this offense that I didn't think Washington had. It's their defense that's failing them. And, Bieniemy's been on a lot of hiring lists and didn't get hired because a lot of people were saying, well, he was offensive coordinator for Andy Reid, and how bad can your offense be when you're offensive coordinator for Andy Reid? Right. So but he's shown a lot of innovation, a lot of work getting their Commanders' offense to work when I don't think they're as talented as they look sometimes. But so I think, Ryan says Rivera's dead man walking. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that.
So, yes. But I think Bieniemy is going to be a coaching candidate somewhere this year. So,
I think he's going to have to get another coordinator job. I don't think Washington's offense is good enough for anybody. I don't think they've done well enough that it's moved the needle that, he's definitely a head coach now. If he wasn't a head coach, if people didn't want to hire him to be a head coach last year, I don't see why they would want him as a head coach this year. There's nothing.
Even with Sam Howell as his quarterback.
They're putting up great statistics, but, I mean, how much of that is because they're just throwing all the time?
Well, yeah, they are throwing way too.
They're behind. They're behind all the time. Yeah,
because of that defense.
I think he's going to be a coordinator again somewhere.
Okay.
Maybe Pittsburgh.
Well, maybe Pittsburgh. Maybe he sets up in Pittsburgh and becomes the heir apparent to Mike Tomlin.
Assuming Mike Tomlin doesn't get fired.
Yeah, well, considering these last two games,
or traded. There's been a lot of chatter that Mike Tomlin could be traded.
The hell of it is, I don't worry too much about how a win looks. As long as you win, that's all that counts in this league. And that's the one thing about Tomlin that I've always liked about him is he wins. But man, it's been ugly this season. And he's been slow to pull the trigger on some things he should have pulled the trigger on, especially Matt Canada. And Brian, I've said that before. If the Bears want to fire Matt Eberflus and bring in Mike Tomlin, if the Bears ever want to bring in Mike Tomlin, I'm all for it. I will take him any day of the week. So I still think he's one of the best coaches in football. I still think he gets the most out of his team. I think he's gotten more out of this Pittsburgh team than maybe should have been expected. So
because of the offense, yes. I don't think he's getting the most out of the defense, though. And that's what you look at statistically, go into your defensive analytics statistics, Tom, and look at what the Steelers have done this year versus last year. And then keep in mind that TJ Watt didn't play last year.
Right.
They have reinserted a defensive player of the year edge rusher on defense, and they got worse. That should not happen.
Well, they're fourth in points per play, sixth in points per drive, seventh in passer rating, defensive passer rating. So, they are in the top 10 in a few of these areas. But, they were better last year. Zozo, come on.
They give up a lot of yards, and those stats are more geared towards points allowed or yards allowed per point. They are very high in that. They have a lot of takeaways. They do a lot of things well, but they're not a dominant defense in terms of
They do give up a lot of yards. Yes.
They give up a lot of yards. And it seems like there's always just one position that's out of sorts. And right now that's inside linebacker. And they don't make the adjustments that are necessary to cover up that hole. Yeah, the last 2 weeks, these last two games, if you want to make excuses for why their losses, well, one, Mitch Trubisky's been playing.
Yes.
And two, they're down to like their fourth string inside linebacker. And the opposing defense or opposing offense is just targeting the tight end, And meanwhile, Matt Canada can't figure out the other team's weakness for his life, and still can't, even without Matt Canada. Mike Tomlin's offense can't target the other team's weakness on defense, and yet they can't cover their own weakness on their own defense.
Right. Yeah.
And look, I do think Mike Tomlin is a great coach, but we'll see. The last four, as maybe the theme of our show, the theme of the last couple of weeks, the jury is still out on whether Mike Tomlin will be back next year. I think
that could be. Yeah, right. Very well could be. So, but those are my picks. Again, God, take the. And by the way, I think the Falcons -3 might be a good pick too. But take the Packers, take the LA Rams, and take the Tennessee Titans. So
today's show was brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app. When you do, use our promo code ASU. That gets you a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. So some free money for you to play with in Prize Picks. There's bowl games that have started today. There's NFL action today, as we mentioned at the top of the show. So can get started today and use it again tomorrow, and use that promo code when you get started, ASU. And we have some picks for you now in Prize Picks, which, by the way, has this new setup where you can choose different levels of difficulty, I guess is what you should call it.
Right.
And it's called Demons and Goblins.
Demons and Goblins.
Where there's not for every player, but for a lot of players and a lot of statistics, you can choose an easier level that has a lower payout, and that's called the Goblin. And then you have the regular standard level, and then a more difficult, higher level that you need to get to. I guess if you're going with the over, if it's the under, everything's backwards. Right. But a higher level of yardage or whatever, and that's called the Demons. And you get a bigger payout, assuming you go with the over with the more difficult or higher standard. So just threw a wrench in our planning for Prize Picks today, but it does give you even more options in the app for week 15.
Yeah, a lot of options. They got 29 different categories for the NFL this weekend. I counted that's just something else. That's a lot to look through. So that's why, we got it for you. We've done the looking. So, we'll give you what you need. But yeah, college football, you got NBA, NHL, so college basketball. This is a prime time for sports and for player props. So sign up and get involved.
So I've got a Saturday special, Tom. I've got 3 players that are playing in the games this evening. I am going with Mitch Trubisky, believe it or not, but I am going with nothing to do with the passing categories with Mitch Trubisky. I'm going with 15.5 rushing yards for Trubisky. I'm going over. He's not going to – I think he's going to struggle again to throw the ball. And we saw Thursday against the Patriots, he does still have that ability to tuck and run. And I think if you're a Steeler fan, you probably want to see him tuck and run a
You
little
want
bit
to see him tuck and run.
because that might be the team's best offense when it's not in the ball's
He's
not in the
everything.
hand of Jalen Warren and Najee Harris. So we're going with over with Trubisky 15.5 rushing yards.
Okay. That sounds good. I like that.
Yeah.
I've always said, even when he was with the Bears, Mitch Trubisky couldn't read a defense if it lined up across from him in large print. So, he cannot read defenses, does not know what a defense is doing.
Yeah.
No idea what's happening in front of him on the field.
You say what you want about, the Steelers not living up to expectations, maybe the big disappointment on offense. But I found this stat this week, Tom. The Steelers are 0-4 when Trubisky plays this season in any capacity. They're 0-4. Those are 4 of their 6 losses are Kenny Pickett leaving early or was injured and didn't start.
Yeah.
So when Kenny Pickett has played a full game this year, the Steelers are 7-2.
Yeah, he seems to find a way to win. He seems to find a way to make a play to Pickens that gets them that brings them back or puts them in the lead or does something, energizes the team enough that they manage to win a game. So it's been interesting, again, to watch that Steelers team this year.
Yeah.
I've got Joe Flacco pass attempts over 35 facing the Bears this week. Bears have, again, the second best yards allowed rushing defense in the NFL. Flacco's going to have to do a lot of throwing. He's done a lot of throwing in his first 2 games this year. 45 and 44 pass attempts in his 2 starts. So Stefanski's let him grip it and rip it. So I think Flacco gets over the 35 pass attempts.
I like that one. I think that's good. And I'm going to go with my last 2 here, Tom, because they're in the same game. Saturday night's matchup, Lions and Broncos. I'm going with Jahmyr Gibbs, 86.5 yards from scrimmage. I'm going to go over there, heavily involved in the passing game. I think he'll get a lot of opportunities against the Broncos defense, which is very turnover prone in terms of getting takeaways on defense. Yeah. So my last one is Jared Goff over half an interception. Goff has had some turnover problems as of late. Had 2 picks last week against the Bears. So he keeps saying that he wants to take care of the ball, but hasn't shown it yet. And I think he's going to have a pick against the Broncos today.
He's thrown 5 picks against the Bears this year. Bears picked him off 5 times in their 2 games.
Yeah.
It's really something. So, anytime interception, I like that. My last 2, Cooper Kupp for the LA Rams on anytime TD. Kupp has been, again, he's been Matthew Stafford's go-to guy, especially in the red zone. So I know Puka Nacua gets a lot of looks from a lot of targets from Stafford, but when he needs that big catch, he goes to Cooper Kupp. So Cooper Kupp anytime TD. And again, with the Rams, Kyron Williams, who has been running very hard since he's come back from injury, 90.5 rushing yards. I'm taking the over on that.
There you go. And again, use our promo code ASU when you sign up. Get you a 100% match on your first deposit up to $100. Thanks so much for tuning in to today's shows, guys. We have regulars on the show. We appreciate all of you. And anybody who's trying it for the first time and sends us comments, we love hearing from them as well. So it was great hearing from Alberto a little bit earlier.
Yep, absolutely.
We hope to hear from him again and any other new listeners that come along. Yeah,
absolutely. Always appreciate you taking time on Saturday to spend an hour with us. And have a great week, everyone.